Hello, and welcome to the fourth pre-record for the History Second Years Careers and Employability module. I want to start this week by quickly going over the portfolio, just quickly reminding you that it is in for Friday, January 21st of 2022, which, yes, is still some time away, but you really need to start thinking about putting together your career portfolio, sending me drafts, asking me if it's working, if it's not working, thinking about the grammar and structure of these things. I've now gone through the three main components of the career portfolio. In the first pre-record, the personal statement. In the second pre-record, the supporting statement. And in the third pre-record, the how to structure application form answers. Those three elements will make the 2,000-word career portfolio. Please do get in touch with me if you have any questions about any element of the career portfolio. Last week, I was talking about, in the last pre-record even, I was talking about the STAR method, which is a way of writing application form answers, and I went through some examples of those in the pre-record, how you structure them, which parts of this structure you focus on to create a good written answer. And one of the portfolio tasks is to pick the questions on the Moodle page and answer them. So, but what I want to talk about this week is interviews, because you can use the STAR method not just for written answers, but also for verbal answers when you're actually in an interview. And a lot of people are very concerned about how to come across well in an interview. One thing I would definitely recommend is using the career services, because they record you in an interview situation, give you detailed feedback on what you did well and what you didn't do well. So get in touch with Kerry Smith, who was in the first session I had with you all, and think about organizing that. But the STAR method is an informal way of helping you answer questions, written and verbally. So again, just to go over it, STAR stands for the situation, where you give a brief description of the context of the example you're giving. The task is where you say, this is what I needed to do. This was the thing that I needed to solve. Action, which is where you focus most of your answer. A lot of people spend too much time on the situation, but you want to focus on the action, where you clearly address how you specifically were central to the success of a situation, and outline the steps you took. And then result. You really want to try and create a clear-cut result, if you can, with quantifiable data. But if not, you clearly need to project to the people who've asked you the question that you've made a difference. So last time I just spoke about the STAR method in written applications. Today I want to talk about the STAR method in interviews. And this week I'm going to focus on 4 kinds of typical interview questions you might get. So I'm just going to go over some examples. What questions might you be asked, and how do you answer those effectively, and what do you want to say, and what do you definitely not want to say, because people come out with all kinds of ludicrous things, and I'd like for you to not do that. So the 4 types of interview questions you're most likely to come across on grad schemes, PGCEs, teacher training stuff are as follows. 1, generic, which sounds very broad, and it is, and that's what I'll open with. 2, your work history, which is what the STAR method is most useful for and what most people think of it about in a job interview. 3, future goals. So most people focus just on what they've done in the past, but it's really important you have a think about what your career goals are, because people and employers are likely to ask you what you're going to do in the future as well. They want to know if you're a long or a short-term investment. And then 4, about the job itself, and that's the opportunity for you to say, show off the research you've done about not just the job, not just the job role, but the whole sector, because often employers will want you to demonstrate that you know what challenges are facing the either individual business or sector they're involved in. So we'll go through some examples for each of these 4 type of questions. And what you really want when you go into an interview situation is to have thought of several examples for as many of these questions as possible. So let's start with type 1, the classic questions, the generic opening questions you might get in an interview situation. This isn't necessarily where you would use the STAR method that I talked about earlier. That's for different ones, although you can try. So first thing that happens when you walk in there, often people will say, tell me about yourself. That kind of slightly terrifying open-ended question. And I've seen people in interviews just ramble on for ages when asked this question. And also when I was working in international development, people just saying completely inappropriate things. This isn't a blow-by-blow account of everything that happens in your personal life. You still want to keep it as professional as possible, highlight the degree you've done. So in your case, history, maybe a few general interests where you grew up, but to be honest, you want to keep this short. The problem most people do is they ramble on for ages because they don't know what to say, and really talk about your passion for the industry that you want to go into. So if you were applying for a history teaching post, you would talk about how you have a passion for history, maybe talk about what periods of history, and then talk about your passion for teaching. Even in situations like this, try and keep stuff relevant to the post. Too many people focus on inappropriate personal life stuff. So no one needs to know about kind of what festivals you've been to, which is something I've heard for this question. So once you've gotten over that, tell me about yourself. Often people say, why do you want to work at this company specifically? And this is an opportunity for you to kind of show off the research you've done, whatever job you're going for whatever company you're going for. Go on their website. What are their values? What is the language they're using? Specifically use phrases and sentences and words that they have on their website. And this is about you trying to align your personal and professional interests with what they're doing. Really drive home that you've done your research and that this company is exactly where you want to be. So what are their values, first of all, and two, what is their mission? Every single company will kind of have values and a mission. You've just got to kind of identify why you will fit in with that. Too often people talk about similar companies and don't focus on the aim. This is really, a chance for you to show your passion for that company. You can kind of apply STAR method to this in that you would, one, outline your own situation, the tasks that you want to do in life, how this company is kind of taking actions that you like, and where you'd like to achieve in the future. So this can be long and short-term answer. Now, these are kind of the classic examples people will often think about and are still heavily used in interviews. It might not always be exactly worded like this, but in the first session I did with you, I went through kind of the main priorities that grad schemes are looking for, such as leadership, organization. And this is where you get to talk about that. In one of the other pre-records, I gave a list of kind of desirable traits. So think about as many as you want. So organization is always going to be good. Leadership is something they're always looking for. Even if you're not going into a leadership role, you can still demonstrate leadership. So have it clear in your head. As you guys are doing history, you might be going into research roles, attention to detail, things like that. So have 4 or 5, and this is where you can use the STAR method as well, because you can give an example of a time you've used that. So if you're talking about research, a strength of yours being you were an excellent researcher, you can give the situation of you were doing your degree, the context of your dissertation, or, you know, a research project, what you did, show the organization within that. You went to these places to find these primary sources, and your result was whatever you got in the end. So you can use STAR for greater strength. So I need you, before you go into an interview, think about 3 or 4 clear strengths and then examples you can use for them. And that's where the STAR method is useful. This is a question. The weakness question is something that people always panic about. And there have been some terrible answers I've seen, frankly. You know, you don't want to be talking about stuff in your personal life, but how do you come up with a weakness that is not going to be off-putting? Because you can't, things like time management, they don't want you to say that. So what do you say? So first of all, I'm going to talk about what you definitely don't say. Anything to do with your personal life. And 2, don't try and pass off a positive as a negative. The classic answer to this is, I am a perfectionist. I have too great attention to detail, and it's really not answering the question. Being a perfectionist is not a weakness to an employer, and if you give that, it seems a really poor answer. So don't go down that old line. A simple trick that I can give you is, you give an example of something you were bad at in the past, and you tell them how you have taken steps to improve this, and that you are still on that journey, but you are much improved. So a classic one is public speaking. Lots of people are scared of public speaking, and you can give an example of how you used to be terrified of it, how you didn't, you know, you couldn't speak in public, you were very nervous, so you took steps to get better, that you went to public speaking lessons, you used the support services at Newman, you practice in front of smaller groups and got bigger ones. And you can say that you're still a little bit nervous in terms of public speaking, but you are competent now. So confidence that you have worked on is a really good one, but it might not be public speaking, it can be anything, but it shows that you've had a weakness, you've identified it, meaning you're self-aware, and you've taken proactive steps to change it. And you're not perfect yet, but you're good now and much better than you used to be. So think of a story you can tell. That's how you can use STAR again. Situation of you not being good at public speaking, the task was that you had to get better at it, the actions you took to improve, and as a result, you can speak in public now. So don't say you're perfectionist, because too many people do this. Don't say something ridiculous from your personal life. No one needs to know if you drink way too much, you'll be off-putting. Use something that you used to be bad at and that you've improved moving forward, because it looks good. What other companies are you interviewing with, and why? This is an interesting one, because really the organization you're interviewing for, or the business or the scheme, whatever it is, the grad scheme, want you to make them feel important, that they're the only company for you. And what you want to do with your answer here is say that you're interviewing with, the company who are interviewing you, and that they are your preferred destination. But it's really good to show that you are applying to other places, similar schemes, because it shows that you are being proactive, you know the industry, you know their competitors, and you can compare and contrast them there. So if you were applying for Teach First, and they asked you, were you interviewing with any other schemes, you could say, yes, I'm doing the Newman PGCE, and I'm also doing Schools Direct. And then you can say what you don't like about those schemes, but why the place you're interviewing for on the day is your preferred destination. Shows a level of proactiveness, shows research skills about other schemes, but also why you prefer theirs. So it's an opportunity for you to appear well informed about the wider sector, but it's really important with these ones that you emphasize that the person interviewing you and their organization is your preferred destination, even though you're applying for other things. Now I want to go on to the second type of kind of question you might get in an interview situation. So after those generic early ones, they'll go into more specific work history. And this is what most people think an interview is about. And that's kind of what I've been focusing on for the last few pre-records. And I've given you several examples, multiple examples of work history and how you can articulate that and what comes across as badly. So I don't want to focus too heavily on the work history one because I've already given you lots of examples, but some things that I haven't maybe covered in the last few pre-records are things like, what is your greatest professional achievement? And the temptation with this is to panic because you've never been a CEO, you've never, done something on a national scale or whatever, but greatest professional achievements can be really small and personal and come across really well. So I had this question, someone gave this question to me once, and I talked about my time in a primary school where I was a teaching assistant, and I was paired with one young boy who's really bad at maths, but we improved and he could do basic maths by the end of year 6. So it can be those kind of things, because that's where you get to talk about your values and what's important to you and show off some of your skills. But don't panic if you don't have a ridiculous one. Those smaller scale ones, very personal ones, come across just as well. And you can demonstrate and articulate your values of organization, persistence, and leadership through that. And talking about leadership, this kind of one, tell me about a time you demonstrated your leadership skills. And what I've tried to emphasize throughout this module, and will continue to do, is that you do not have to be a leader or team leader to demonstrate leadership skills. You can do that if you're at the bottom of whatever organization you've been at. So it's just about being proactive. Don't be aggressively negative about other people you've worked with necessarily, but always emphasize you. This is the kind of work history ones, and these kind of questions is where you can use STAR, situation, task, action, response, where you were the central driving force in a situation. So don't worry if you weren't ahead of a team, you can still demonstrate leadership. This is a really interesting question. What do you like least about your current or previous job? And I've had that asked to me in several job interviews, and you've got to be careful because you're obviously moving on or trying to move on. So something isn't working, but they don't want you to be overly negative or unpleasant about your previous employer. It's about showing that you are perhaps limited in how far you can progress, that you need a new challenge, that you just like this new organization. This is not an opportunity to just slag off where you currently work, although I'm sure you might be tempted to do so. So I've brought this up because I've been asked it a few times. Try not to be overly negative and make it more about thinking about the future and liking this institution more. Something that I brought up a few times already, and I know it concerns some people, is a gap being in your employment history. And you don't have to just say you were fired, or if you were, there's lots of good things you can say here. Sometimes you can just say personal circumstances that you prefer not to go into. Some things you don't want to say is just, you swanned off and have been doing nothing. Whatever the gap in employment is, you don't want to just say, I went to Spain for 6 months and had a great time. Try and make it constructive, whatever that was. And that can be, family situation, That can be you were laid off. There's been a lot of that recently. Employers are much more understanding about that, but you want there to be a constructive reason for that. So just think, if you do have that gap, why does it exist? And also, if you want to run your ideas past me, please do just get in touch if this is something that concerns you. Type 3, the third type of question you might get in an interview, is something that I don't think lots of people plan for. They think so much about their strengths and past examples, but a lot of the time you'll be asked about, what are your future goals? Because employers are worried about, they're making an investment. Are you a short-term or a long-term one? So I've kind of touched upon this already a little bit with what did you not like about your last institution, but why are you leaving your current job and changing careers? Because I know some of you are changing careers. And again, you want to remain really positive with this, that it's more about the job you're applying for being in line with your future plans. Especially over the last year, lots of institutions are thinking about the blend of working at the office and working virtually from home. So an increasing question, there are a few studies that draw attention to this, is that employers are asking, what type of environment do you prefer to work in? And I think it's really important to demonstrate your flexibility here, that you can talk about like being in the office some of the time, like being at home some of the time, but that you can do both, and give examples of how you can do both, that you work well in a team in person, but you can also be trusted separately. So this is kind of a very specific question that's emerged after COVID, but I think it's important that you could give examples of being able to work in any working environment. Another question that is becoming increasingly popular with employers is, how do you deal with pressure or stressful situations? Mental health is much more important to employers than it has been in the past. And this is a good opportunity for you to demonstrate how to work in a busy environment, a stressful environment, and that you have already identified coping strategies, whatever it is. And there can be all kinds of weird and wonderful coping strategies: time management, organization, having journals, having organizers, using apps. There are lots of amazing apps that you can use to keep yourself organized. So that, as well as more personal ones like sport or yoga, things like that. So before you go in an interview, think about, how do I know what my triggers are? Do I know my own mental health? And can I articulate how I can keep on top of things? This is a classic question in, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And you have to be careful with this, that you don't, you want to show that you're ambitious and that you're hardworking and you have plans. No one wants someone to come in and just say, I fancy working here until I can work somewhere else, even if that's the case. Even if this is a stopgap for you in your career, I think it's really important that you convey to them that you want to work hard, you'd like to get promotions, whatever that should be, that you see yourself at the institution in 5 years, but earning more money and having more responsibilities. You don't want to suggest to them that you want to work for a rival company or replace the boss. I've heard in a few interviews people say, I want your job. And they think it's funny, they think it's witty, but it doesn't come across well. You want to show planning. This is an opportunity for you to, what is happening in the future of the industry, what projects do the institution you're applying for have, and then that you want to be a part of that. But you want to demonstrate you're ambitious, and you'd like more responsibilities moving forward. How do you plan to achieve your career goals? This is about something I mentioned in the first week, career development. People want to know what you've done and what you can do. So at the moment, even though I'm a lecturer, I'm doing a postgraduate certificate in higher education to make myself even more employable. That's more likely to give me a senior lecturing role. So you can talk about what opportunities you would want to take, courses in management, courses in organization. There are so many career development courses out there, careers in public speaking, to show, so you can demonstrate you know what's out there and how you can improve yourself, and how that will allow you to facilitate more responsibility in the future. This is an interesting one, and it might seem silly, but some, employers might go too far and ask questions about, marriage and children, blah, blah, blah. They have no right to do that. If an employer asks you a question that is too personal, or too personal even, about your career and personal life, they have no right to ask this. And if someone asks you a question that is too personal about your plans in the future, feel free to say that in the interview. And perhaps a question like that might put you off working for an institution like that. But it's important you know your rights going in. No one has a right to ask you this question. Finally, the fourth kind of question is kind of realistic expectations about the job. And this again allows you to demonstrate some knowledge about similar roles. So each job will have a specification and a list of things that the job will want for you. Know that inside out, so you can really give an account of what you think the job will be. And this may well result in you realizing perhaps this job isn't for you. Perhaps they realize the job for you isn't either. But it's really important to get into your head what exactly the job is before you go in. So a question that I've seen on a few graduate recruitment schemes is, what do you think the 30 days, your first 30 days on the job would look like? So this is why it's so important to go on the website first and say, oh, I think these will be my main responsibilities, because there will be literally bullet points on the website highlighting these. This allows the interviewer to know, have you actually done your research about this post? Usually the first 30 days of a job includes some kind of probation time period where they assess you. So think about what it will look like. And what do you think we could do differently? This is interesting. I got asked this for an international development job. So it's about, again, demonstrating research into the institution and finding something that could be improved without absolutely just slating what they have done. So the example I gave when I moved to Honduras to work for this international development charity was they had a scheme, women's football team that was getting women out of abusive relationships. And I said that I really liked what they were doing there, but I thought it could be expanded into the following areas. So often you can find something you like, but you can say, but I don't think you've gone far enough. I think that could be expanded. So turning a negative into a positive, but make sure you know what kind of things the thing you're applying to, what are their schemes at the moment. And then finally, do you have any questions for us? This has been asked at every single interview I've ever had. And you really want 4 or 5 questions in your head before you go in, and maybe several of them are answered naturally throughout. If that's the case, try and think of new ones. You really want to demonstrate kind of your enthusiasm and proactiveness towards it. And I always think that people who don't ask a question at the end come across worse than those that do. So try and have that in your head. So those are the 4 kinds of questions you might get in your interview. A lot of them can be used. You can use the STAR method to help you structure them. Some of them you can't. Hopefully you've got an idea of what comes across well and what does not come across well now. But if you have any questions about interviews, please get in touch with me. And again, please use the services as careers, because the interview filming technology they have is brilliant. Thanks a lot, and I'll speak to you soon. Again, please get in touch with me if you have any questions. Bye.